Welcome to day 10 of the short read sequencing analysis workshop. My name is Rutendo and I'll be giving you an introduction to plotting in R. In this video we'll cover loading your data into R, doing some filtering, as well as plotting in ggplot2. R is a free statistical computing and graphing software that is freely available and can be installed from the R website via the r-projects.org. There are various environments that you can use to run R, such as RStudio or Jupyter. However, you can also run R within the command line and write different bash scripts to run R. When loading your data into R, there are different file types that you might encounter. Examples being a comma-separate file or a tab-separate file. A comma-separate file usually has a .csv file extension name, whereas a tab-separate file tends to have a .tsv extension to its name. When loading a comma-separate file, you'd use the read.csv command and specify the path to your file name as well as the file name. When loading in a tab-separate file, you'd use a read.table command, specify the file name. In addition to specifying your file name, you want to specify that your file is tab separated using the sep equals \t. And what the \t is, it's a literal tab, just telling the computer that the separations are tabs. In addition, you can specify if you have a header or not by using header equals true. And this header equals true can also be applied to the read.csv command. Now that you have your data, you can consider filtering by values in a column. And to do so, you can use the subset command function within R. And the subset function takes in the data frame that you're working with and then specifying which columns and the values that you are considering to filter by. In this example, we're filtering our data frame df by the full change column such that the full change is greater than 4, as well as filtering it by the p-value column such that the p-value is less than 0.01. Another way to filter your data frame is to filter by rows or columns. And it's important to note that the notation for data frames. When you have a data frame, the contents of the data frame are denoted by brackets, square brackets, and a comma, where before the comma we're talking exclusively about the rows, and after the column we have contents of the column. So say we want to filter by a gene name and want to filter by rows, then everything that we do, all the commands will have to be before the comma where the row is. So in this particular example, we have our data frame, and we're filtering the data frame such that the column, genes column, is equals to P53. And what this will give us is a row for P53 and all the information that is specific to P53. If you want to consider multiple genes in this data set, say we want to look at gene 1, 2, and so on and so forth, we would give, instead of just giving a single P53 in quotes, we'll give a list of genes that we are interested in, and to do so we'd use the C in parentheses, the genes that we're interested in. So now that we've filtered our data, we can then decide to do some plotting to visualize what the data looks like. And at this point, I'm going to give you a rundown of what ggplot2 and how to plot different graphs within ggplot2. So ggplot2 was developed by Harley Wickham and Winston Chang. The syntax is very easy and allows for plotting of publication-ready or post-ready graphs, which makes ggplot2 very attractive when you want to visualize your data. To install ggplot2, you can install it by installing the tidyverse package, or you can install ggplot2 directly by installing install packages ggplot2. Alternatively, if you want to install probably the most latest version of ggplot2, you can install from GitHub using DevTools. However, the easiest method is just to install .packages ggplot2. When plotting with ggplot2, you first supply ggplot2 with your dataset. And to do so, you say ggplot in parentheses the data frame that you're looking at and specify the aesthetics. And within aesthetics, you specify what your x-axis are and as well as what your y-axis are. Once you have your dataset selected, you can then add layers to the plot. And the layers designate exactly what plot you want your data to, what plot you want your data to be represented in. So if you want to represent your data in scatterplot, you'd use the geom point layer, and to add this, you'd say plus geom underscore point. If you're interested in looking at your data as a bar graph, then you'd use plus geom underscore bar, or alternatively, if you're interested in looking at the box plot, then you'd use geom underscore box plot. There are a lot of layers that one can apply within ggplot2, and these are easily found at the ggplot2 cheat sheet. So if you Google ggplot2 cheat sheet, you should be able to find this representation of all the layers within ggplot2. Additionally, to make your plot easier to visualize or read, you can add different background themes. As similar to the layers, you'd add the background themes using the plus summation sign. And some of the plots, one of the plots that I'll be showing you later on in this video will use the theme underscore classic background theme. So an example of the dataset that we will be working with is a sample of a differential gene expression analysis pipeline, where all the rows represent each gene and each column represents the values that correspond to a particular gene in the analysis. One plot that people usually tend to plot within differential gene expression analysis is having the average expression on the x-axis and the log twofold change on the y-axis. And so for the examples that we'll be showing you, that's what we'll be working with from now on. So to do so, we supply ggplot with the dataset, and we do so by saying ggplot in parentheses the data frame that we're working with, which is de underscore data, and the aesthetics where we specify that our x-axis will be the log average expression and our y-axis will be a log twofold change. In addition, we'll add a geom point aesthetic to a geom point layer to specify that we want to plot a scatter plot. And we do so by adding the summation geom underscore point. And we have our first scatter plot with our x-axis log base mean and y-axis log twofold change. So now, in order to make this prettier, we're now going to add more layers to this plot. And the first layer we're going to add is the theme underscore classic, and this is going to add the white background with the y and x-axis lines. In addition, we'll add the x and y lab, and what these do specify the x-axis and the y-axis. And we're going to add a title using the GG title layer. And lastly, we'll adjust that such that the title is centered at the center of the plot. Alternatively, we can add a layer for the zero line so that we can split our upregulated versus downregulated genes. And to do so, we use the geom underscore h line layer, where H stands for horizontal. So if you want to do a vertical line, you can imagine how this geom H line will change. So instead of geom H line, it will be geom V line for vertical line. And specify that our aesthetics such that the Y lab is equals to 0, the color of the line is red, and the line type is dashed. So at this point, we're showing you how to add different layers. So we can add more layers depending on what we want and even what data we want to represent on the graph. And an example of a final output from ggplot is the final MA plot where we've colored the red dots as those that are significant using a p-value cutoff of 0.05. And we've filtered out specific gene of interest to be colored blue, and we're labeling it as well in this plot. Another thing that we did in this plot is to make the title and the axis bold labels. So to wrap up this video, we're going to leave you with a few resources that may be helpful in plotting with ggplot2, as well as different R resources that may be helpful. So the ggplot2 website has different examples that you could follow to visualize your data and decide which data you want to look at. R bloggers and quick R are good resources to look up if there's a quick way of analyzing your data the way you are thinking you want to analyze it. And then the last thing is R for Data Science book by Harley Wickham and Garrett Grollemund. This book is freely available on their website, so if you Google R for Data Science, you should be able to come across the book. You can also buy the book as a hard copy on Amazon. With that, thank you.